I'm Andrea with Andrea Nicholas Cakes here in Portland, Oregon, and I am going to teach you how to cover a round cake tier with fondant. What you want to do is elevate that cake tier just a tiny bit. A cake pan is a really great option, and you want a cake pan that is smaller than the tier that you're covering. So go ahead and just stick that on there. Make sure it's nice and stable. Okay. All right, when we're working with fondant, try not to use more fondant than you're going to need to cover the cake. This is definitely more than you're going to need, but I just wanted to demonstrate how much you're going to need. Think about it though, when you roll it out, this is going to become a lot, so I'm going to cut off that excess. Once you put that on that buttercream, that fondant is going to get covered in the buttercream and you can't reuse it. Fondant's fairly expensive stuff, so try not to use more than you need. We're going to use a sifter, and I've got some 10x powdered sugar in here. And that is going to keep that fondant from sticking to my table. So put a decent amount on there. Don't worry about using too much. You're going to brush that off. You want to make sure that you have enough to keep it from sticking. All right, so we've got a nice layer. I'm going to go ahead and put a tiny bit on there, right on top of the fondant too. Nice round, flat, just like as if you were rolling out a pie dough. Move these things aside. All right, this is a nice lucite rolling pin. You can go to any plastic supply store and get this cut into whatever length you want. It doesn't have any imperfections in it. Make sure it doesn't have any imperfections. That's going to come out on your fondant. It's a great big rolling pin. It's really nice to work with. So I've got this all laid out. Got a little powdered sugar on there. I know it's not going to stick. Just like you would with pie dough, you want to give it a little roll and a turn. Roll and a turn. Kind of work from the middle. Nice, thin sheet. Kind of keep moving it around. Make sure that it's not sticking to the table ever. Try and keep it round. Now I have a little pin on hand at all times, just in case a really large air bubble should pop up in your fondant. Go ahead and try and eliminate that early on so that gets rolled out. Fondant does get air bubbles, especially in heat. You do need to work fairly quickly. You don't want it to dry out. So now I'm just going to kind of roll my hands over it, give it a nice gloss and shine, make it nice and clean. Now we've got all that excess powdered sugar laying around. That's okay. It's not a problem. I have an X-Acto, and I'm going to dip that in some shortening so it doesn't stick too much. And I'm just going to cut off any excess that I don't think I'm going to need to cover this tier. This is more fondant than it's going to be necessary. A pizza cutter is a good tool to have for this as well. When you're not working with fondant, do try and store it somewhere so it doesn't dry out, okay? All right, so we've got our round here. It's ready to go on our cake. And I've got a nice pastry brush. I'm going to move this circle over so I've got some space. Moving my cake so it's in a place where it's easy for me to get it on and work with it. Okay. Now I'm going to use that lucite rolling pin to roll up that fondant. I've got a nice little pastry brush here so I can kind of work and get any of that excess powdered sugar off. I don't want to have big clumps of that on my cake. Same as you would do with a pie crust. Okay, very quickly, I'm going to start here, and I'm rolling it onto the cake. Now this is the part where you really need to work quickly. I'm going to start flattening up that top, making sure everything's secure. I don't have any large air bubbles in there. Okay, and now I'm going to slowly kind of start getting that around. Now if you see that it's really hanging down on the cake, you want to have some scissors. You don't want so much hanging down that it's really pulling down and then creating cracks in your fondant. So you want to work pretty quickly here. Just cut off any of that extreme excess so it's not pulling on the cake. set that aside. Okay, now just gently, gently shape that and kind of work it around the cake. You never want to try and grab all of it all together in one place, because then you might end up with a huge amount of excess. So just kind of slowly pull it down and work with it, get it all around the cake. See how I'm covering all of that up, and we've got just that part at the end. I'm kind of pulling and gently pushing it down, pulling and gently pushing it down, working all the way around, making sure it's covering the whole cake. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to use my fondant tool, kind of work my way around it, nice and smooth. You want to use a little pressure here, but not too much. Obviously, you're not trying to mar the fondant in any way. Okay? And we're going to fix this up, any imperfections later. Let's get back to our X-Acto. Great tool to have. I dip it in my shortening so it doesn't stick or create any jagged edges. And I'm going to put that in where it meets the baseboard of the cake and make a very clean cut and get all of that excess fondant off. Go ahead and re-dip it in there if you need to. Okay, at this point you kind of got the fondant that you're going to work with. I'm going to go ahead and use that fondant tool to kind of round out that base edge. Not really round it, but just soften it. Okay, and now you just want to work with it. Make sure it gets nice and flat and smooth. So we're just going to kind of gently move around there. Gently get those sides, make sure they're nice and even and smooth. All right, and that's it. That's how you cover a cake in fondant.